through. All right. So where can we get free stuff? Let's go shopping. Here's the Epic Games Launcher. The most obvious place is that there is a marketplace, right? You can buy an entire world for $80 that you can make an entire game out of, right? There's pirate coves and sci-fi hallways. There's sections called free, and Epic Games has their own content. There's a game called Paragon that they spent $50 million on that Fortnite just became their priority, so they just gave it for free. You can get all these characters, all these assets. So it's $50 million of assets. You have every month they give you 5 new assets. They now made Mega Scans free, which was this. It cost $24,000 a year for licenses to all these high-resolution scans of textures and stuff. So Pages and Wonders is all free, and then they have a permanently free collection, which again has all these maps and worlds and things. So you're going to go shopping this week and find something that makes sense to you. You can always search for things that make sense. Like I want it to be low poly or sci-fi. Find these things and hopefully we have it for free. Again, I mentioned this in maybe last week that under your library you have the assets that you've purchased, right? And because I've been doing this for 5 years and I always charge my clients for all my assets, I have over 300 assets here. If you want to log into my account, on my syllabus is my login for my account. It's going to ask you for a 6-digit verification number. As soon as you hit login, it's going to email it to me, Slack me, I'll copy and paste it and give it to you. You have to do it within 10 minutes, otherwise you have to generate a new code, right? So then all these things can be either added to a project or they create as new projects. And we're going to talk about how to keep file sizes down today, right? And then the other place that's really important to go to is this Learn tab. As engineers, this is where you reverse engineer stuff. And so the Learn tab has entire projects that we're going to go through. How do you do, first of all, the content examples? I highly recommend that everyone installs content examples. It's the encyclopedia of Unreal, and we'll go through it in just a second. But it has samples of how you do lighting for interior design, how do you do new destruction for blowing up buildings. We'll be using the virtual camera starting in 2 weeks. We're going to literally just use this face AR sample next week. So these things are all, this is why I want to make sure you guys had space, because each of these projects can be multiple gigabytes, and I just wanted to prep you for that. Ultimately what we'll do is we'll just take the assets we want and then make it really intuitive for just taking the asset and its dependencies. So it'll take not only the 3D model but all the textures it's referencing and then put it over into the project, and that's how we keep our main project streamlined, because ultimately next half of the semester we'll all be sharing the same project and we don't want anyone to make bloat.
When will you suggest how to use the virtual version of Bryant?
We'll wait until the week 8. Yeah. But I have it. If you want a video already, I do it every class, and I can give you those videos from previous years if you want to get on it now. And if you ever want to use, I have unlimited version control. If you just want to use it for this semester for your own project, I do that all the time for people too. Boom.
I've noticed when I've opened up some of these examples, they use plugins that I don't have yet.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to just download all the plugins that you might need? And because it
There's-
makes you go to the store and search it.
I only know of the Substance being the one that does that. Is there other plugins that you're seeing that you can't find?
I mean, I can find them. It just it makes me do it one at a time.
Show me a project that does that, and I'll see if there's a way around it. All this stuff should all be. These are all internal plugins potentially. Maybe the Virtual Studio wants some other ones, but these should all be encapsulated projects for you to download and run. Again, there's tons of these as well. There we go. So yeah, 2-step verification. So the content examples. This is what I was saying is the encyclopedia of everything Unreal can do. If I say File, Open Level, there's all my levels right here, and each one of these things talks about special effects or level design. This is a really interesting one. Again, we're not making levels from scratch, but it would be interesting for you to know how level design is done, right? This is like a 4-pass project. You have where you're just blocking things out with simple assets. Maybe you start thinking about lighting and materials. Then you start adding in these atmospheric effects that, again, add more depth and texture. And then you do what's called the beauty pass, where you add in particles and sound and stuff like that. So if I hit play here, it gives me the basic block out, right? This is very simple. And then I can go through the level and see, here's what it kind of looks like, right? Come back, and then I say, well, what's the next phase? The next phase is adding textures, and a little bit of light. Right. Next one is adding particles and textures, and then we're going to add in sounds and stuff. Right. So this is a cool, interesting idea of like what are the different phases of blocking out levels so that you're not literally kind of painting yourself into a corner, going too far in something that doesn't user test correctly, right? So you don't want to, sometimes it's fun to get really into details, but maybe not until later on, all right? And so other things that are cool about this is you can steal stuff, and this is called migration. If I go to effects, I have this. See, they do it like these little kiosks, right? It's like a museum or something. I could find something I think is cool, right? Right. They could do some collisions, and like a guy's on fire. If you ever want to avoid camera, having to worry about the camera, if you just say simulate, it'll just hit play wherever you are, and you can watch him. This guy's got his mocap, right? He's on fire, right? You steal that dude. You could do shadows with some of these particles. This is called a vector field. It's a single frame of a fluid simulation that if a vector's x, y, and z, right? So there's like these little arrows in space, and I might be able to show it. Can I show vectors? Well, we don't get sidetracked by that, but it could be something pretty cool. Anyway, and then each, these particle systems are emitting, and then each one is following the rules of all the vectors it sees as it walks around. Vertex. Anyway, so lots of cool things. There's the vertex right here, right there. So what if I find something I think is really cool? I mean, they're all so cool. Let's steal ribbon trails. All right. So what they have right here, this is called a sprite. This is the way to select that. So you're not trying to chase particles around. You find that sprite, which is like lets you select the blueprint or the particle effect. Okay. I have also opened the project I've been kind of working on with you guys last week, right? And I want to put it over here, okay? So if I go to contents, there we go. And right there I see I've selected it. It is called Ribbon Trail 7. Right click and I can say Browse to Asset, which is also shortcut Control B or Command B on a Mac. It shows me where it is in the content browser. And there's the asset. The asset has, it looks like it's just a particle system with a texture. So it'd be kind of like two assets. I can right click, and then it says Asset Actions, like a submenu, right? And then Migrate, right? So right clicking on the asset in the content browser, going to Asset Actions, and saying Migrate, it says, here's all the things involved. It has these two materials, so the material for the particle, material for the smoke. It is a particle system, and those materials have two textures in it. So it found everything it needs, and it's going to take it with it, right? I'm going to say OK. And it says, show me where that content folder is of my target project, right? And my target project is called ETS 2020. So come here, ETS 2020. I have too many hard drives. There we go. It says find the content folder. I select on the content folder. Boom. Said everything was fine, no errors. Sometimes you've already migrated some stuff. It'll say, hey, there's already over here. Do you want to make sure you overwrite? And if I come over back to here, to my project, I shouldn't have to refresh or reopen it. I just can look for the word ribbon. And there it is. Right? Compile shaders, all that kind of stuff. So I'm now taking things from other projects. So what I like to do is, so you go shopping, right? And what I like to do is I usually make like a junk project on my computer that I send all this stuff to. Like, let me be more specific. Let's say I want, obviously these things create their own projects, and some of these things, they say, they make their own project, but most of these you see it says add to project, add to project. If you keep on doing that to your main project, you're adding in 100 megabytes, 100 gigabytes. You keep on doing that kind of stuff, and it makes your project bloat because you just need one texture, right? So I usually have a junk project that I send all this stuff to, and then I only migrate the things I want into my actual project to keep my file size down, so it opens quicker, so it compiles sooner, all that kind of stuff. So I always have like this junk shelf that then I can pull the things that are the pearls to. So what I have here is two different things. I have an entire map, right? I have the particle effects map. I could just use this for my project if I want to, and I can bring my character here. This is based off of, it has a couple of maps that are actually on top of each other. We'll go into submaps in a second. So I can just bring my character in here. I can migrate it over to this project and do some screenshots or whatever here. But maybe I want to make my junk project. Maybe I need to actually just migrate over specific maps to my main project I'm using for my semester or for the second half of the semester. So this is what I've been using. And let's see, I've already imported in like the dark forest. Right, so this is something that I have in my asset collection. And usually they have like, usually they have a demonstration, and then they'll have sometimes just like a layout where you can see all the things lined up one by one. And we saw that kind of already with the treasure that we did the first week. So I'm going to save. So this is this cool little forest with like a house inside. This is totally a set location. You could totally have a movie here, right? So if I want this, I can again bring in my characters here, or I can migrate this entire map to my project. If you migrate a map, it'll take everything in that map, and it'll just work when you get to the other project. I've never had an issue with this. I've never had any conflicts with this. It just works, right? So it's just I might have overcomplicated this but basically it's the idea of being efficient with file sizes and your hard drives. And the fact that anything that you migrate will bring its all dependencies and it won't be broken. As long as you keep the same engine version, right? We're using 4.23 for this class. Okay? So you found a map you think is awesome, and this is where you want to put your mocap. So there's sometimes a barrier of entry, which is sometimes there's a cutscene already, right? You hit play, and it already does something, right? So I remember I was so confused when this happened. I was like, how do I stop this? And I lost like hours and hours to this. We've already talked about level blueprints. Just go to your level blueprint. And what it's saying is on event begin play that sequence. You just right click and say, don't do that. Right? That's all it is to, now you own it. Let me know if you get any heavy problems with that. But basically, also if you hold down Alt, it will just break it as well. Oh, so now when I hit play, it's just wherever my camera was, wherever my player start was. And then I can move around. If you ever have any problems with that and you can't solve it, remember what I said earlier, that if you just hit simulate, it'll bypass all that crap. I can't find my house. Let's see. Let's find the house. That's a good lesson. So so the house is right here. There's a carpet. If I double click on this asset, there I am. And it's all about getting quick with navigating, or what's called tumbling through the environment, and getting comfortable with like finding stuff. What they're doing is they put a bunch of cameras, and they were doing this sequence edits all the different cameras together, and it shows it which one it cuts to. Right? We don't have to worry about this for right now. We're gonna do this live. We don't have to worry about this. But if you do think it's kind of cool and you want to mess around, if I move around, I can just come over here and say, create a camera, and there's literally a camera right there. And this is how you can frame things. Like, oh, I think that shot's really cool. Do that. Create camera here. Yeah, and there it is. So I'm framing things, and it's going to actually create the thing there for me. Yeah, so then you can like do cuts, and you could do like, most of the stuff we're going to do is be long single takes, but just a little trick since we're here. So we've done asset migration. Now you can do asset manipulation. We've already seen that there's plenty of details for every object inside your scene. We're going to talk a little bit more lights later, but like lights have their own color, and that can greatly influence what your scene looks like, right? You can even kind of paint with light, right? There's one light, and it's a little bit orangish, and we can do kind of the opposite, and then where the two meet are white light in the center, right? And then you want to put maybe like this is a devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder. Like there's a lot of symbolic meaning with this kind of stuff, and it's really easy to fix things around. Maybe there's too much texture here, and you want everything to be very simple. You can always just create a new material. So assets, materials, and I had this base one that I made, right? And so this base one could be here instead. Right, simplify it a little bit, makes it more cartoonish or smooth or something like that. It's too photoreal for what we're doing. And usually you should be able to select all the objects and change it all at once, unless they have different amounts of materials on the object. So, you get a material, and you get a material, and you get a material. Right.
Is it easy to clean your Unreal files for unused content?
For what kind of content? Oh, this is when I migrate my map. Yeah.
So when you migrate, that's what makes it run through.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your approach.
The first project I made that I was showing was at 1.60 gigabytes,
Okay.
and it was too, and we didn't have version control.
Yeah.
So and we were presenting it on 4 computers.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine trying to zip up and transfer a 60 gigabyte project to 4 computers every time you make a change. Right, so I started being smarter about. I got it down to 1 gigabyte, and then I put it in version control, and then we just pull it. So it's about making the mistake, so you know not to do it later on too, as well.
Sure.
So anyway, so we can obviously those things can be manipulated. Maybe I want my scene to happen in the center, so just start selecting my items and deleting. Right, this is all very obvious, but we're manipulating things for our scene, and it can all be rotated and moved around as you do your set design. There you go. A lot of these assets, maybe not so much this one, but if we go back over to our particle effects, you can see how they build these things by all these rocks are like the same exact rock, but when you start stacking them and rotating them, I'm holding down Alt and it makes a duplicate, you can't really tell the definition. Isn't it cool how it adjusts for the exposure in the room? Like you can't really tell that it's the same rock as the one beside it. You just move it down, and that's how this whole level's literally built. Is it's the same rock over and over and over again, and it just kind of seamlessly blends. Right, so there's some cool like what's under the hood here kind of stuff. And then later on we can learn how you can actually paint grunge or paint stains on it so that it has a unique look to it. But this is just how you manipulate things as is. Cool. If you do want to do something from scratch, it's simple enough. None of this stuff works for you, or you found a lot of set decoration, but you need to have a certain landscape to this stuff. Actually, we'll go to the other project. So here, I want to say new level, and I want to use the sky that exists, but I don't want to start just empty because I want to be able to use my sky. So let's save. So new map, it's got a sky, and I want it to be midnight. So you can see my skylight right here is facing straight up. It means my sun is underneath. I go over to the sky sphere, which is like a very complicated blueprint, and say refresh. It's now midnight. Little trick there. So this blueprint, the sky sphere, it's looking at a light source, which is this one right here. And as I rotate this around, it changes the time of day. Changing time of day is actually for 2 weeks from now, but here we are. Might as well show it. And blueprints being cool because they have parameters that you can manipulate. The big one being in this one. So you see I'm rotating the light, and then I have to go back and hit that refresh. And it's ready. The big one here for me is I like the cloud. I like the stars. Right. But you got clouds, and the clouds have speed, and they have colors, right? So all this stuff this is when they say kind of like why it's easier to learn Unity, because you start with Unity and you have like this like really ugly sky and it doesn't do anything, and you put a box and you have a box and an ugly sky. Here you have an entire complicated blueprint. You haven't earned it yet, so it could be overly confusing to own the scene if it has too many things that are happening. But this is all being driven by this one blueprint that is highly complicated, but everything is public parameters that you can just read. Like, if you know what a cloud color is, you can change the color of the cloud, right? Makes sense. So I want to do a landscape real quick, and I'll make my own thing. Delete. And this is over here. We haven't used this window that much. This is all the stuff that's built into the engine, right? We have lights and cubes and very basic items here. This is called vertex painting. This is how we add that grunge later on. We won't do it today. And you can see we could do things like paint weights. We've talked about weight painting, haven't we? And then we have a tool right here that's called landscape. Remember what one of our headings for the lecture was: space equals time. How much space do we actually need? Do we need to have an infinite horizon, or are we just making a stage? This, as you can see, is already a lot of polygons. Only use what you need. Don't make the biggest world in the world. There's different sizes, right? So I can bring down the resolution. Sorry, I chose the same one, right? So a smaller stage. This is probably sufficient for a VR piece where I'm standing still. I don't need to spend time putting effort into details later on. You can look around at these settings. There's not many settings, so it's pretty straightforward. And then we can say create. Give it a second. I'm done with these scenes, so I'm going to go ahead and close this up to free up some resources on my computer. All right, so here we go. Here's my landscape. And this little checkerboard thing is called the world grid material, just so you can see what the UV mappings are. And what I have here is an inner circle and outer circle, which is, it's denoting the fall off, where the inner circle is where whatever I'm doing is 100%, and the outer circle is where it's at 0%. Right? There's an attenuation for this brush that I have. And this is just like using Photoshop in 3D, where I am sculpting now. You see where managing was building it. It moved me over sculpting, just like Optitrex Motive does. It finished one section, and now we're over to the next section. I can do all sorts of things like make things raise up, make things go back down, smooth out, cap it. I can build ramps. I can simulate erosion, so it has all these different creases and lines around the edge. So all these things are here. They're pretty self-explanatory. If you want further, there's lots of YouTube tutorials about all this kind of stuff. But in general, I'm clicking, and if I left-click, it goes up over time. If it's going up too quickly, I could bring down the strength, so it happens a little slower. And then if I want to go back down, I think I can just right-click. Oh, I can alt-click. There's one way to make it going back. Shift-click. Control-click. Sculpt goes one way. Oh, I think I do it this way. Shift makes it go down. Shift and left click makes it go back down. Regular click makes it go up. There you go. It's been a while since I've done this. So down and then up. Usually if you want to create some sort of horizon line, you go around the edge and make it go all up around the edge so you can't see over it. And then center you make it come back down. And this is happening too slow, whatever. So I'm making like this valley that's around me. But it's really smooth, and so I can always noisify it. Alright, so noise. Where's noise? Right there. It adds a little more texture. And then maybe sometimes you want to like put a house. So what you do is you find a point in space that you want it to be the cap, and then wherever I put this little inner thing, it flattens it to right there. So this is my little shelf to put my house in. Alright. So it's just like photoshopping, and then you have a size for how big your brush is, right? So I can do some more finer detail, and then the fall off, how long it takes to trail off from 100 to 10. So those are good there. We're not gonna get into painting really. Let's just move on to how you would apply what's called foliage. Let's first of all see if I have any like grass, because I have a whole bunch of things imported. And yes, I have one material that is a grass. It's probably gonna take a while to compile the shaders.
And that material right there is, I always get confused by this. It's a photo reference of grass, like high resolution.
It could be all those combinations of.
And it could, okay, so it can be a grouping of different things between like,
Yeah.
like a shader. So whatever.
This is a shader. Material is a shader that can use textures. Like this is the base texture, the base color. But then I might want to add some noise to it so you can't see it repeating itself every so unit. So there's a lot of stuff here that we won't get too much into, but you could steal it. That's the idea for right now, or buy it, borrow it maybe for the class.
I think the thing that always confuses me is like why can't you drag in a super high resolution photo?
You essentially can, but you right click on it and say make this a texture first, because there's so many parameters you need to tell it. Is it lit, unlit? Does it apply to skeletal meshes? Does it apply to landscapes? All that kind of stuff.
So very interesting.
Yeah, and I could try to also be helpful and explain it to you as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So I've made my landscape, and I'm very happy with it. And I'm sure if I go really high up, I might be able to see some repeating textures. But it's a pretty good material that's made for landscapes.
Yeah, this is nice.
Yeah, this is super nice. So let's populate it with some foliage. Normally you would have bushes, you'd have rocks, you'd have flowers and all that kind of stuff. But that might be a little bit too uncreative for us. Let's filter by all the meshes that we have. You can only do this with meshes. You can't do it like particles, which would be really cool. Here's all the things in the world. We have that treasure that we imported a long time ago. We have some construction things I added in on purpose, and which has vehicles. And let's do some of that. So I'm not going to just plant living things or foliage, living things. We're also going to have an array of pylons and traffic cones and crates small crates and big crates and hats and occasional porta potty and some urns that we're stealing from the treasure. And if I want something to really be there a bunch of times, I want a lot of urns. No, you can't do it that way. Oops, cancel. And then you have some settings for these meshes about how they fit on the land and how dense they are. So here's how I choose how many. I want there to be a lot of urns, but bathrooms are too expensive for this festival, so we're really gonna only 1/10 of the bathrooms to urns. We're gonna encourage you to pee in an urn if you have to go. Then, do you want to have a different amount of scale? Like some objects are smaller than bigger, so you have a range of scale. I want it to be 0.9 from my base mesh to 1.2 of my base mesh, so the minimum is 0.9. So be a little bit smaller, be a little bit bigger. And then aligned to normals. Do you want all trees to go straight up, or if it's on a bank, do you want it to go straight out? That's the normal. That's which way the polygon's facing. So there's a lot of parameters. Here again, you can always read the details later on. Let's go ahead and look at our brush for foliage, which is, this is our size. This is what we'll be painting. And again, we have density for that. So I can now paint that. All right, maybe that was a little bit too dense. I can always undo. And let's get the paint density down to like 0.1. And maybe the brush size can be bigger. So same amount of 1.1, so 1/3 of the amount of objects, but give it to me on twice as many of the size. Cool. Right, and it's aligning to the normals. Right. These don't have collisions. It's instanced. It's only referencing one of those objects, and then each one's kind of like a mirage of the other one. So if you're running around, you can walk right through them, right? So this is meant for just like grass. Essentially, we're just having fun and painting around it. Cool. And then when I'm done with this, go back to the regular placing objects, because you don't want to have this this brush on and accidentally continue to add things over and over and over again. You can always remove it. You can select individual objects. and delete them if one too many. So you have all the control of that. I want to make it like circumference for my performance to happen. Again, the budget cuts, we can't afford this many porta potties. Cool. Moving on much quicker. Okay, so this is about this is what we need to know for setting up a scene. We know how to add some foliage should we have a bare ground. We know how to manipulate things from a pre-built world. So now let's get back to kind of what we didn't finish up from last week, which is how do you take this motion and put it into our character, okay? And for this, I'm going to remote into the computers so we can do it from Motive, right? So I have Motive here. I have our Naruto right here. Thank you for being for generating our motion for today. And I'm just going to hit play. This is it. We're fine. This is done with what we're done with Motive. We can always right-click this and save this to an FBX and do a process of retargeting. I might show it, but it's, again, we're doing everything live in our class, so it's not as important for workflow. What I'm going to show you is a little bit more experimental. So we right now are going to lay out for capture, and there's a small button right here that's called Streaming Pane. It's also under View Streaming Pane, Data Streaming Pane. And this is a way of sending data from one computer to the other, or from one application on the same computer to the other. What we've done here is we have two computers. One of them is this beast Corsair that has like 30 gigabytes of RAM and a 2080 RTX card, and we're going to send data over to that one and let it run Unreal for us. So what we're doing is we're streaming, check that off, over a local interface over from our IP. Is everyone cool with an IP address? You know, IPs, it's like our physical address, but of our computer on the network. What's important to know is that NYU blocks protocol. It blocks these protocols, like TCP, UDP, which we use for OSC, ABC, the whole East Coast family. No, it's blocked for our own protection, which is why ITP has generated a sandbox network for doing our stuff, or it's why I always carry around a tiny router with me wherever I go, so that I can create my own intranet. Okay, so there is a pretty good router in that room that has both of those computers on it, right? We've given IT at NYU the MAC address, the hardware serial address of that, and it's been allowed to be on the outside network. So those two computers are on the outside network, but they're on their own safe intranet. A lot of people, when we talk about this stuff, they don't realize they can't do this elsewhere. If I was trying to take my phone and talk to my computer for face tracking in this room without another router, it wouldn't work. And students, of course, have lost many hours to this kind of stuff. So I'm saying it up front. This is a streaming protocol that would be blocked by the normal NYU network. And another thing to note is that all these computers have all firewalls off. If you don't use Windows, you might not be exposed to firewalls, but it's just something that's supposed to protect you. They're all turned off so that we can not have to worry about debugging that asset. Okay. So the other things that are important is we're sending rigid bodies and skeletons. We only need to really send skeleton right now because we're not doing any prop tracking, and that the bone naming convention is FBX. What's cool about the process that we're doing is that if it's non-FBX, Motion Builder is going to change it automatically, so it's going to save our butts on this. So anyway, unless anyone screws around with this is the default setting and should always just be here. You just need to record your take, and it can be doing live or it can be pre-recorded, and everyone has pre-recorded data. All you need to do is have it up, have it playing on loop, and then we go to the other computer. This is the two screens from the other computer. And Views worked perfectly fine here if anyone wants to come over here and use it and make human. And we are going to open up Motion Builder. This can be done in Maya as well, but I haven't actually done it that way. There's documentation for it. And this is what we were going to do last week, but it didn't work because of I had to reset the application settings on Motive. They just gotten too wonky. So, Motion Builder. I introduced this last week by saying the stupidest layout ever of a piece of software, but it does amazing things. Our main general areas of interest, of course, the viewport. Here's where everything is kind of this is our world outliner for everything we're going to be manipulating. And then here's some built-in assets. If we were going to rearrange this layout to look like Unreal, that would go to the top left, and that would be up here on the top right. So the first thing we're going to do is connect it to OptiTrack. OptiTrack is called a device. And again, I'm screen recording this, and once you get the plugin working or loaded in, it has really great documentation too. So there's 3 different kinds of OptiTrack plugins. This one says OptiTrack Insight V virtual camera. We're not using that. One's for optical data if we wanted to just stream over the markers. But this one is OptiTrack Skeleton, all the way down there, and it's for doing skeletal retargeting. Just drag it into the world, and the plugin just popped up right here. That user guide, that button will open up a PDF, and this explains everything I'm about to do for you in real time. Okay. The IP address is also auto-populated. I've already put it in there and saved it. This computer is 192.168.1.3. The other one is 192.168.1.2. It's the local address versus the server address. The server is sending data over. Should be, by default, ready to go. So, that noise was my mouse turning off. Okay. So, OptiTrack plugin. Here's the interface from here to here. Online. Green means go. Let's send over the live data. And model binding. Create a new model binding. Essentially, here's our data. Okay? We've established a live connection between the 2 pieces of software. Coming back over here, remember when I said that there's bipeds and quadrupeds? It's already identified that this is a biped, and it's given it a character name based off of the name it's given over there in motive. All right. So of all these different sections over here on this left side, that's probably too small to even give a tutorial on for right now, is that you have a scene that's everything in your world. You have the characters, which are the ones that are ready for mocap data. You have your devices, which is OptiTrack. And then later on, we're going to be recording takes to down here, and the take name will be called whatever we name it there. All right. So everything is kind of grouped over here in a very condensed area. All right. So I have my character over there on the hard drive. In the downloads. There you go. Fire pants. So Fire Pants goes in, and it says, do you want to merge or open? You want to merge. You want to have them both in the same scene together, right? So merge. This Mixamo.com is the animation take name, which just means T-pose. That's the animation I added onto it. I can also just say no animation because the character is made T-pose inside of Fuse. Okay. This has already been rigged. I could change the way it's displaying to show the bones to make it easier. And you can see it has like the different meshes. So I went over to display and did X-ray. And what we want to do is have the motion capture data move this guy. Okay. So we need to tell Motion Builder that it's a biped. Okay. And then it'll be added to this list of characters that we can do motion capture data with. This over here of all our built-in assets, we have our little standard character. This is called characterization. It's totally convoluted, but we need to find our hips because the hips don't lie, and characterize the hips. The hips are the root of the character, and when the little pop-up says characterize and biped, it has been added to our list of characters. And to make things even more confusing, Motion Builder, thank you, it's been characterized as the character name of character. So we have a character named character. Obviously, that's not ideal. I'm going to point out that it is absurd, and I understand your pain. That's why I'm recording all this. You can rename it, and you call it Avatar or Bobby or whatever. All right? So the other one, luckily, has been renamed for us automatically based off of what we named it in a Motion Builder. So I want to do something to Bobby. I'm just going to double-click on Bobby. And we have these character settings. Right now it's in a stance, it's in a pose. But I want it to be controlled by a character instead. This is why you want to rename it, because if you want it to control by a character name, character gets a little confusing. And by default, the only other character there is our motion capture data. So we now have a character being driven by this one. And if we just say activate, there we go. Remember when I was talking about motion capture data that there's 2 main decisions you have to make, or one main decision that has 2 different settings you need to make, is our motion capture data, or your profile is taller than the character, the avatar. And therefore, in world space, you run further than the character does. They are scaled, the motion is scaled. But if we were designing around an absolute space, we put tape on the ground and there's a lot of props, I would want them to match. So I can actually link their feet so they actually step in the same spot. It's really, really funny if you have really different scales and you have like a tiny person stretching their legs to where a big person's standing. Motion Builder is a 20-year-old veteran of motion capture, does everything for motion capture. It does more things I haven't even thought about doing. That's just one button under retargeting called Match Source. And then so then I can see it locks it. That's the only setting that you needed to make a decision about for this class, is whether or not you want the performer to drive the scale, or if you want the positioning inside the mocap volume to drive the absolute positioning. All right, as soon as I let go, it goes back to the other scale. All right, don't even worry about it for right now. That probably is too much information as it is. And this is active. This has actively been driven. Okay, so you've now done the hard part. Now you have to do, all you have to do is record it. Okay. Going back over to my devices, double click on OptiTrack, and just say I want to be in recording mode. And then this is called the transport of everything play and stop on. I say go in recording mode here. It says, do you want to overwrite the current take? Our current take is empty, so we can overwrite it, or we can create a new one if we want to do a new take. But let's say overwrite. And it's ready. It's not doing it yet because that menu came up and it stopped everything. Whenever I think I'm in the right position, I hit play. It's recording. You can see the timeline scrubbing. And then when I get to the end of the animation, I hit stop. Right? I turn off recording. I turn off live. And there's my take.
Do it have to include T-pose in the report?
No. You can always trim that here, or Unreal, when you import animation, it lets you either do full animation, or you can trim it there, or if you import it, you can also delete the frames. There's many places in which you could do that. This is just the animation you want in your final piece, right? So this is another cool way of creating animation, and then I just say, File, export the data. Let's see. I'm not sure. Let's export the data, and we'll just give it a name called. You could do many takes, and this take is actually. I told you there's a place called takes at the bottom, and it's called take 01. We can give it a more meaningful name like running. I hit file export, and these are. I can have 100 takes here. Bobby running, and I can export it all, and then it's ready to go inside of Unreal. I think I put it in this project. Cool. So that's all you need to do to then, as your character's already pre-imported, you can just keep on adding those. Yeah. That's why you always need to export the T-pose, and if you throw in a Mixamo, and then apply the T-pose animation, and then you can download that, and that's what you can start off with. Otherwise, you have to like manually rotate things, and it's extremely tedious. All right, guys, give me 10 more minutes, and we'll be up and running. All right, so that's all you need to do to bring it in. We already know how to import animations, but this is not for the homework. This is just so you can start getting the idea around your head. Is that we're going to be doing a live link into Unreal as well. So if you go to settings right here in your plugins, this is a built-in plugin called Live Link, and we're going to be using it for the rest of the semester. Live Link is 2 words. And just make sure it's turned on. You have to restart the engine if it has been turned on. With Live Link available, plugin turn on, we can open it up, and there it is. And we can now receive data from Motion Builder. This tutorial is verbatim inside of this link right here. right? So this is how I learned how to do it, and I'm just repeating what it's doing. We just need to open up Motion Builder so we can send data from Motion Builder, and this is literally what we're going to be doing for the rest of the class. Back to devices. Oh, it stopped. Let's just go back to live real quick. Live. There we go. So with it live going, we're going to go into, this is a tutorial, this is a plugin that's already been installed. Throw in Unreal, and now we have two devices. We have an OptiTrack skeleton and an Unreal thing. This is literally bypassing a plugin that we used to have to pay $5,000 a year to do. So we turn this one online. We choose the object, which is we're going to select those hips again. We want to send the whole skeleton tree. So dot, dot, dot. We look inside of our scene, and we find Mixamo hips, and we add it. There it is, and you're done with Motion Builder. One thing that could happen is that if Unreal's in front, sometimes it doesn't render all the frames. It's like a background application. This is in the tutorial as well. Go down to the very last thing, System, double click. Say always refresh viewer. And now it's running in the background. I've got Bobby already imported here. And I'm doing what's called an animation blueprint. This is the blueprint we'll do all our motion capture with. If you right click on the skeleton and say create an animation blueprint, we call those ABP underscore, whatever you want to call it. And again, this is much further than where we need to go this week. I'm just showing you that this is possible, and this is where this can be done, so you can actually do your mocap live and look inside of Unreal and actually be in the environment while you're doing mocap. And also the performer could be wearing a VR headset and be like really immersed and stuff. So where's my data coming from? Motion Builder. What do I care about? Mixamo rig. Where is my animation blueprint? Here. And you just right click and look for live link posts. And there it is. And now we're getting motion capture data inside of Unreal. Live. And what's cool about that is that there's a record button right there. And that's what we're doing the rest of the class actually is recording from Unreal. Right? Unreal Motion Builder is just a bridge to get here. When we do face tracking, it'll be another live link. When we do, so we just keep on adding these little nodes. It's a much more simplified process than like the motion capture class, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, and so now you bring in this animation blueprint. We're using a OptiTrack plugin, yeah. So now, if I want to preview, he's in this world, hanging out with these dudes about to fight. Right? So this gives you an idea of the workflow. All we need to have is just the pre-recorded take for this week's homework. But it was just one more step to get us to the rest of the class, is doing this. So once we get the face capture stuff going on there, it'll be there live, and you can literally, put on VR headset and interact with these performers if you want to. Cool. So I'll stop the recording just to